Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the more you gave, the more invisible you became? You text first. You show up. You listen. You support. And yet she drifts. She pulls away. She stops seeing you. And worse, you start losing sight of yourself. Here's a truth that might sting at first, but could just save your soul. The moment you need her, you've already lost her. That's not just a catchy line. That's a shift in how you see the game, the entire dynamic of modern love. Because somewhere along the way, society sold you a story. And you bought it. They told you that love means proving yourself. That to win her heart, you have to chase, impress, and sacrifice. That the more you show her you care, the more she'll care about you. But what if that's the biggest lie you were ever told? What if that version of being a good man is actually what's been robbing you of your power? We live in a world where men are being taught to seek validation instead of purpose, to prioritize being chosen over choosing themselves, to equate approval with worth. It's everywhere: movies, dating advice, even well-meaning friends. Be vulnerable. Show her she's everything. Make her your priority, and yet look at the results. Broken hearts. Burnt out men, chasing, pleading, performing. Is that power? No, brother. That's dependency in disguise. Let me be clear. I'm not saying don't care. I'm not saying become cold. I'm saying this: if your entire sense of value depends on how a woman sees you, you've already given away the throne. Because here's what women are drawn to. Even if they never say it out loud, they're not drawn to need. They're drawn to presence. To the man who can stand still in the middle of emotional chaos and remain grounded. To the man who doesn't orbit her, but orbits his purpose. To the man who, if necessary, can walk away with dignity. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he refuses to shrink. You see, modern love isn't broken, it's confused. And too many men are waking up to the same bitter truth. They were never told how to lead themselves emotionally. They were told how to please. But here's the thing: being soft and emotionally available doesn't mean being spineless. It means you know your own worth so deeply that you don't hand it over for approval. You don't need someone else to complete you, because you've already done the work to feel whole. So if you're the man who's tired of feeling like no matter how much you do, it's never enough. Tired of bending until you break just to be seen. Tired of losing yourself in the hope she'll finally choose you. This is your wake-up call. This isn't about manipulating anyone. This isn't about games. This is about power, the kind rooted in clarity, calm, and confidence. The kind that starts when you reclaim yourself. Ask yourself, do I even know who I am without her validation? What would my life look like if I stopped chasing and started leading? You're not here to beg for love. You're here to become the man who doesn't need to chase it, because the truth is, the man who needs nothing is the one she ends up chasing. And that journey? It starts now. So if you're ready to step out of the illusion, if you're ready to stop being the one who bends and start becoming the one who builds, stick around. Because this isn't just another video. This is the beginning of your return to power. Let's get real for a moment. You ever notice how the harder you try to prove yourself to her, the less she seems to care? You send thoughtful texts. You're always available. You explain your feelings. You check in just to make sure she's okay. But instead of getting closer, she pulls back. Her replies get shorter. Her tone gets colder. And you're left wondering, what did I do wrong? The answer might shake you. You needed her. And she felt it. See, here's the unspoken rule of attraction that no one teaches you growing up. Neediness kills desire. Not because she's heartless, but because energy doesn't lie. You can say all the right things, wear the right clothes, have the perfect gait. But if underneath it all, your actions say, please pick me, please validate me, please tell me I'm enough, she will feel that deeply. instantly, and something inside her will start to close off. It's not about the words, it's about the energy. And energy doesn't beg, it either stands strong, or it leans too hard. Most men don't realize this. We're taught that being emotionally available means constantly reassuring her, being open, being soft. But that's not availability, that's overexposure. That's giving yourself away before you've even decided if she deserves that access to you. Let's flip the script. Instead of chasing, pleasing, or trying to win her, what if you started asking a more powerful question? Do I actually choose her, or am I just afraid of being alone? That shift from I need her to I choose her is everything. Because now, your sense of self isn't tied to her approval. It's rooted in your values, your purpose, your self-respect. You don't need her to feel whole. You're already full, and she's welcome to walk beside you, not above you. Let me give you a real example. I knew a guy successful, smart, emotionally intelligent. But every time he started dating someone new, he went all in, too fast. Constant messages, constant reassurance seeking. He thought he was showing love. But what he was really doing was bleeding insecurity. And you know what happened? They always left. Not because he wasn't nice enough, but because he made them the center of his world before he even knew who he was without them. He didn't have a strong why. He didn't have a mission outside the relationship. He was asking them to be the sun when he hadn't built his own solar system yet. And that's the problem. When you depend on someone else to make you feel enough, you stop being magnetic, you start being heavy. And nobody wants to carry another person's identity. So how do you fix it? You rebuild from the inside. You stop measuring your worth by her reactions and start measuring it by your alignment with your purpose. You ask yourself, what's the life I want to live with or without her? What kind of man do I respect, even when no one's watching? Would I choose me if I were in her shoes? This isn't about becoming detached or emotionless. It's about becoming so grounded in your own value that no rejection can shake you and no silence can define you. And ironically, that's when she starts to feel drawn in again. When she realizes you want her, but don't need her. When your attention isn't a default setting, it's a choice. That's when the polarity returns. That's when respect blooms. Because now, you're not orbiting around her, you're anchored in yourself. She's no longer your emotional oxygen. She becomes a mirror, a reflection, a complement to the man you're already becoming. So if you've been overgiving, over-explaining, or losing yourself just to keep her around, step back, look in the mirror, and ask, am I trying to be chosen, or am I finally ready to choose me first? That, my friend, is where true power begins. Let me tell you something no one ever taught us growing up. Your attention is your most valuable currency, not your time, not your money, your attention. Because where your focus goes, your energy follows, and where your energy flows, your life grows. Now, here's the painful truth. Most men today are going bankrupt, not financially, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You wake up and the first thing you check is her Instagram story. You reread that last text from her. You're wondering what she meant by that pause, that emoji, that delay in reply. You're decoding silence like it's Morse code. And without even knowing it, you've made her the main character of your mind. But let me ask you, what are you building while your focus is chasing shadows? See, attention is power. And when you give it away freely, without awareness, you become reactive, scattered. And worst of all, you become easy to manipulate. Because here's the thing, a woman doesn't lose interest because you care. She loses interest when your center shifts from you to her. When your entire identity starts orbiting around her presence or worse, her absence. Let me paint a picture. Imagine a man who's locked in on his purpose. He wakes up, and before the world pulls at him, he pulls himself into alignment. He's in the gym. He's building something. He's reading, learning, growing. His attention is sharpened, directed, intentional. Now compare that to a man who starts every day checking his phone for signs of approval, who scrolls endlessly, half watching other people live their lives, wondering if he still matters to someone who stopped texting back. Tell me, who holds the power? Because power isn't loud. It's not aggressive. Power is where you place your attention when no one's watching. Now I get it. We're human. We get distracted. We care. We want to feel connected. But here's the question. Are you choosing your thoughts, or are they choosing you? Most of us never trained this muscle. No one sat us down and said, "Hey man, your focus builds your future. Guard it like it matters." But I'm telling you now, if you don't take control of your attention, someone else will. So how do you reclaim it? Start small. Track yourself for one day. Just one. Notice how many times you reach for your phone without thinking. How many mental loops are spent wondering what she might be doing. Then ask, what if I gave this energy back to me? What if you channeled that curiosity into your business idea? That intensity into your workouts? That obsession into mastering something you've been procrastinating for years? Because attention isn't just passive energy, it's fuel. And if you keep pouring it into people who haven't earned it, don't be surprised when your own tank runs dry. You want her to respect you? Then stop giving her your focus like it's free. A man who gives away his attention recklessly loses his edge. But a man who protects it, who chooses where it flows, is someone the world starts paying attention to. Women feel this shift too. They know when they're no longer the center of your gravity. They feel when you've stopped orbiting them and started orbiting your own purpose. And ironically, that's often when they lean back in, not because you chased them, but because your focus became earned, not given. So ask yourself, what are you building when she's not around? What habits are shaping your character when no one's clapping for you? Because the man who owns his attention owns his direction. And that kind of man doesn't chase, he creates. He doesn't beg for validation, he becomes a force others naturally follow. So if you're ready to draw a line in the sand, if you're done leaking your focus into empty screens and unanswered texts, say this to yourself: I own my focus. Say it like a promise. Then prove it with action. Because the man who reclaims his attention, he doesn't just get the girl, he gets his life back. Let's get honest. Have you ever caught yourself waiting for her reply, refreshing your phone, thinking, did I say too much? Did I say too little? Did I do something wrong? That creeping anxiety, that desperate itch to be seen, to be validated, to be chosen. Yeah, I've been there. Most men have. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If she becomes your mission, she will never respect you. That's not because she's cruel. It's because deep down, no woman wants to be the center of a man who has nothing else holding him up. She wants to be invited into something bigger, something already moving with, or without her. She doesn't want to be the mission, she wants to meet a man who already has one. See, when a man lacks purpose, he starts reaching for something, anything that gives him a sense of meaning. And the easiest place to reach? A woman's affection. But here's the danger: when you make her your mission, you start moving from lack, not from strength. You overextend, you overcommit, you overexplain. Not because you're in love, but because you have nothing else to build. And when that happens, she feels it. You stop being the mountain. You become the shadow of her moods. And no woman wants to follow a man who bends with every breeze. Let me tell you something that changed my life. Purpose is not ego. It's structure. It's spine. It's the North Star that keeps you grounded when everything else, feelings, opinions, relationships, try to pull you off course. A man on purpose moves different. He's not glued to his phone. He's not obsessing over her last text. He's building. He's focused. He's evolving. And it's that direction, that consistency, that makes him attractive. Think of it like this. You don't become magnetic by standing still, waiting for her approval. You become magnetic by moving with such clarity and intention that she either keeps up or gets left behind. That's not arrogance, that's leadership. And that's what flips the dynamic from chasing to choosing. Now look, I'm not saying relationships don't matter. They do, deeply. But the strongest relationships happen when two whole people come together, not one person propping up the identity of the other. So ask yourself this: what are you building without her input? What lights you up in the morning before the world gets noisy? What would you still be chasing if she ghosted tomorrow? If you can't answer that, it's time to pause and get clear, because when you operate from purpose, your entire posture changes. You stop asking, why hasn't she texted me back? And start asking, what's my next move, with or without her? You stop showing up to win her over. You start showing up already centered. And here's the beautiful paradox. When she sees that you're not looking at her like she's the prize, but instead, she's witnessing you chase something higher, that's when the attraction deepens. Because now, it's not about her approval. It's about her alignment. Women don't fall for men who orbit them. They fall for men who are going somewhere. Men who lead not with control, but with conviction. So if you've been sitting in that limbo, waiting for her to see your worth, wondering if you're enough, let me remind you, you don't become worthy when she says yes. You become worthy the moment you build something bigger than needing her yes. You want to be respected? Then, stop making her the mission. Become the mission. And watch how everything changes. Let's talk about something most men have never been taught, and yet, it's one of the most powerful forces in every relationship: the frame. Now what is the frame? It's the emotional container that shapes how the relationship feels, moves, and evolves. And whether you realize it or not, someone is always holding it. Either you or her. When you're the one holding the frame, you're leading not by force, not by dominance, but through stability. You define the emotional tone. You decide what energy is welcome and what crosses the line. You know who you are, what you believe in, and where you're going, and you don't let temporary emotions derail that path. But when you drop the frame, when you start adjusting yourself to her every mood, when you chase after silence, try to fix what isn't broken, or walk on eggshells just to keep the peace, you give the steering wheel away. And once you do that, her respect starts slipping through your fingers. Now don't get me wrong, responding with care is part of being a man. But reacting every time she pulls back, tests your limits, or changes her energy, that's how you lose yourself trying to please someone else. Let me give you a simple example. She goes quiet. Maybe something's off. Most men panic. They text 3 times. Ask, are you okay? Check her stories. Wonder what they did wrong. But the man who holds the frame, he doesn't spiral. He gives space. He stays calm. He doesn't abandon his peace just because she's unsure of hers. That's leadership. Not in the old school, control freak way, but in the way that says, I don't need you to behave a certain way for me to stay grounded. I know who I am, even when the room gets emotional, and women test this all the time. Not to manipulate you, but to find out, can this man hold space for me when I'm unsure of myself? Can I trust him to remain steady when I'm all over the place? Because if the answer is no, if you flinch at every mood swing or emotional withdrawal, she learns, often unconsciously, that she has to lead. And the moment that happens, the polarity dies. So how do you hold the frame? You start by defining your standards. Not expectations. Not rules, standards, who you are, what you tolerate, what you walk away from. You don't scream. You don't argue. You don't chase. You calmly say, when you're ready to talk like an adult, I'm here. Then you return to your life, not in anger, but in confidence. That's the kind of presence that makes her feel safe, not because you're controlling her, but because you're not controlled by her. It's the difference between reacting to her storm and becoming the eye of it. And here's a powerful truth. The man who cannot lead himself emotionally will never be trusted to lead a relationship. Because she's not just watching your actions, she's feeling your center. Is it solid? Or does it shake when she pushes? If you're the kind of man who bends your boundaries just to avoid conflict, if you abandon your standards the moment she withholds affection, you're not leading. You're surviving. But leadership isn't about survival. It's about direction, clarity, purpose. So ask yourself, have you been reacting to her moods or responding from your values? Have you been adjusting to keep her, or standing tall in who you are? Because when a woman sees that you're not moved by every shift in energy, when she senses that your emotions are your own to lead, that's when respect begins. That's when attraction returns. And that's when she stops testing and starts trusting. So if you've been letting her energy set the tone, if you've been chasing, explaining, proving, it's time to shift. Hold the frame. Lead with standards, not reactions. And everything will start to change. Let's start with a truth most men aren't ready to hear. The man who can walk away holds all the power. And no, I'm not talking about threats. I'm not talking about ultimatums. I'm talking about calm, quiet clarity. The kind that says, if this doesn't serve my peace, I will let it go. And I'll mean it. Because here's the thing. A woman doesn't lose respect when you disagree with her. She doesn't lose respect when you have boundaries. She loses respect the moment she senses you won't leave even if she stops showing up. Let that sink in. If she knows you'll stay no matter what, no matter how cold she becomes, how disrespectful, how distant, you've handed her something you can never fake, leverage. And when she holds that kind of emotional control over you, the dynamic shifts. She doesn't have to earn your attention anymore, it's assumed. She doesn't need to bring warmth or consistency, you've already told her. Through your silence, I'll accept anything as long as you stay. And that is when attraction dies. But let me be clear, detachment isn't coldness. It's not pretending you don't care. It's not ghosting or playing games or shutting down emotionally. It's simply saying, I care. I love, but I don't chase. That one shift changes everything. Because now, your energy speaks before your words ever do. She feels the difference. She realizes this man values his peace more than my presence. And ironically, that's when she starts to lean in. Because here's something rarely said out loud. Women don't want to fully possess a man. They want to feel him, but know that if they cross a line, they could lose him. And the man who can walk away usually never has to, because she senses it. She senses that your attention isn't free, that your presence isn't handed out like candy just because she smiled today. You've done the inner work. You've built a life where you are already enough. And that means you're not clinging, you're choosing. You're not chasing, you're deciding if she still belongs in your space. And that level of self-respect, it's rare. Because most men, let's be honest, are terrified of being alone. They confuse love with attachment. They think holding on tighter is strength, when in reality, it's fear in disguise. But real strength is in the release. It's in saying, I would rather be alone in peace than partnered in chaos. I would rather walk in purpose alone than crawl beside someone who no longer respects me. And when you stand in that kind of truth, without yelling, without trying to prove anything, she notices, she reevaluates. Because you've just redefined the terms. You've made her see you again, not as someone desperate to be chosen, but as a man who chooses. Let me give you a simple phrase that embodies this mindset. This is what I offer. This is how I live. If it aligns with you, beautiful. If it doesn't, I'll keep walking. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but because your standard is no longer negotiable. That's the walk-away power. And look, some people will leave when you stop chasing. Some will fall away when you stop shrinking. But what you'll gain is your center, your dignity, your peace. And that's worth more than any temporary comfort. So if you've been caught in a loop trying harder, giving more, holding on tighter, take a breath. Then ask yourself, if I truly valued my peace, would I still be here? If I wasn't afraid of losing her, what would I actually choose? Because at the end of the day, the strongest men are not the ones who never feel pain. They're the ones who feel it deeply and still choose clarity over chaos. So, say it with me and mean it. I care, but I don't chase. Because the moment you live that truth, you stop seeking power, and you become it. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he has to make a choice: stay the boy who reacts, or become the man who responds. It's subtle, but it changes everything. Because here's the truth: a boy reacts. He gets triggered by tone, silence, withdrawal. He mirrors whatever energy she brings to the table. If she's warm, he melts. If she's cold, he crumbles. If she pulls away, he chases, pleads, texts a paragraph explaining everything. Sound familiar? That's not leadership. That's emotional dependency in disguise, and yet most men good. Men fall into this trap, not because they're weak, but because no one ever taught them emotional self-governance. We were taught to chase validation, to perform for affection, to react to pain like it's the end of the world instead of a signal to reflect. But let me offer you a different path. One sentence, one shift, one standard: I respond, I don't react. This isn't about bottling your emotions. It's about owning them, holding them, mastering them. Let's break it down. Imagine she ghosts you. The boy, he spirals. He sends a wall of text, demands answers, rewatches old messages, tries to fix it. The man, he pauses. He feels the sting, yes. He's human, but then he leans into stillness. He says, I care, but I don't beg. I'll move forward with grace. Or maybe she says something disrespectful in a moment of heat. The boy snaps back, gets defensive, raises his voice. The man, he holds the line. He calmly sets a boundary or walks away without drama. It's not that he doesn't feel, he just doesn't let his emotions steer the wheel. Because here's what you must understand. Women don't respect men who collapse under pressure. They don't trust the guy who can't stay calm in discomfort. They test not to destroy, but to discover. Can this man hold himself when things get messy? Or does he fall apart when I push? And if she learns that her silence can make you panic, that her moods can control your behavior, she stops seeing you as a leader and starts seeing you as someone she has to manage. That dynamic is exhausting. And sooner or later, it kills the connection. But the man who responds, he's different. He doesn't need control. He has composure. He's not trying to win her approval. He's anchored in his own, and that's the paradox, the less reactive you are, the more powerful you become. Why? Because now you define the moment. You're no longer a puppet to external energy, you're the one shaping the room, and that kind of energy? It makes women, especially feel safe. Because you're not unpredictable, you're not emotionally fragile. You're steady, clear, grounded. Let me ask you this. How many times have you said something you regret? Not because you believed it, but because you were hurt and reacting from fear? Now imagine if, instead of reacting, you took a breath, paused, and responded with intention. With your values, not your wounds. That's what separates the boy from the man. Not numbness, not apathy, but clarity in the storm. So if you've been playing the role of the emotional mirror, if you've been losing your sense of self every time she pulls away or tests you, it's time to evolve. To stop being the puppet and become the mountain. Say it with me. I respond. I don't react. Let it become your creed. Because once you kill the boy who reacts, you don't just earn her respect. You earn your own. And that, my friend, is the beginning of everything. Let me ask you something personal. How can you expect to lead her emotions if you haven't even learned how to lead your own? That's not a judgment, that's a mirror. And it's one I had to face myself, because for years, I thought strength meant being stoic in the wrong way. Shutting down, hiding how I felt, acting unbothered while dying inside. I thought I was in control. But what I was really doing was avoiding myself. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about selecting what deserves to be felt and when it deserves to be expressed. There's a huge difference. See, most men have never been taught this. We were told to man up, but never shown how to manage pain. We were told to stay strong, but never given tools to process heartbreak, betrayal, uncertainty. So what happens? You fall for someone. She becomes your anchor, your emotional compass. And when she pulls away, you panic. Because she's not just a person anymore, she's your stability. And that's the moment it all starts to fall apart. Because here's what no one tells you. The second she feels like she's responsible for your emotional regulation, she starts pulling away, not because she's heartless, but because she didn't sign up to raise a man. She didn't sign up to carry the weight of your confidence, your security, your worth. That's your job. You want to know what emotional mastery really looks like? It's not acting like nothing affects you. It's being deeply aware of what does and choosing not to be ruled by it. It's the pause before you speak. It's the deep breath before you reply to a sharp comment. It's recognizing that your jealousy, your fear, your sadness, they're real. But they don't get to drive the car. That's leadership, and women feel that. They relax in that. Because now your emotional center is no longer up for grabs. Let's get practical. She cancels plans last minute. You feel disrespected. The boy inside wants to lash out. Send a guilt trip text. Demand an explanation. The man? He steps back, processes, responds from standard, not emotion. Maybe he says, "Hey, I value communication. If this happens again, I'll take space." And then he follows through. Not to punish, but to protect his peace. That's emotional mastery. It's choosing presence over panic, boundaries over begging, clarity over chaos. Because at the core of all of this is a simple truth. You cannot lead her anywhere you haven't already walked. If you can't sit with your own discomfort, you will ask her to fix it. If you can't process your fear, you will expect her to soothe it. And that dynamic? It breaks trust. It turns love into obligation. But when you become the man who can feel pain without falling apart, who can hold space for tension without flinching, she starts to see you differently, not as a boy to play with, but as a man she can trust, a man she can relax around, because now she doesn't have to lead. And that's the power no flex, no tactic, no performance can replicate. It's quiet, it's calm. It's the kind of power that doesn't ask for attention, but commands it through presence. So let me leave you with this. Mastering your emotions is not about becoming hard. It's about becoming centered. It's about knowing what matters so deeply that no storm can pull you off course. It's not that you never feel, it's that your feelings don't lead. You do. So if you've been reacting, collapsing, waiting for her to regulate your mood, it's time to take the reins back. Say it with me, I lead me first. Because when that becomes your truth, everything else begins to align. Here's a hard pill to swallow. If your lifestyle doesn't reflect evolution, your words don't matter. You can say all the right things. You can act cool, seem detached, even quote Stoic philosophy line by line. But if nothing in your daily habits, your routines, your reality has changed, she sees right through it. You can't fake growth. And you can't speak your way into being attractive. Because true attraction doesn't come from trying to look evolved. It comes from actually becoming someone new. Not the man who's still clinging to the old version of himself, but the man who's been grinding so consistently, so quietly, that even he doesn't recognize who he used to be. That's what draws her in. That's what makes her pause, second guess, lean back in with curiosity. Not because you begged for attention, but because you went silent and started building. Ask yourself honestly, if she were to look at your life right now, without a single word spoken, would she see a man who is evolving? Would your actions tell the story your mouth's been trying to sell? Because that's where the shift happens, not in performance, but in trajectory. The direction you're moving matters more than where you currently stand. Let me say this clearly. You don't evolve for her. You evolve for mastery, for your mission, for the version of yourself that's been buried under comfort, distraction, and fear. You evolve for the man you promised yourself you'd become. Because the truth is, the man she left shouldn't even exist anymore, and that's the goal. Not revenge, not proving a point, but growing so far beyond the old you that anyone who walked away wouldn't even recognize the man you've become. That's the power of quiet transformation. No announcement, no explanation. Just results. She checks in one day, and your voice sounds deeper, your schedule tighter, your posture more grounded, your presence sharper. And suddenly she doesn't know how to talk to you anymore. Why? Because you're no longer in orbit. You're a world of your own. And she either rises to meet you or fades into your past. That's the energy of a man who has made peace with solitude, who's stopped waiting for external validation to start internal expansion. You want to be attractive. Become the standard, not the exception, not the temporary distraction. The standard. The man who doesn't just move on, he levels up. He refines his habits, upgrades his environment, protects his focus like it's sacred, because it is. She should look at your life now and think, damn, he didn't just move forward. He moved so far, I'd have to evolve myself just to stand beside him again. And the best part? You didn't do it for her. You didn't do it for applause. You did it for you. Because the man who upgrades for approval will always be chasing. But the man who upgrades from conviction, he becomes undeniable. So here's your challenge. What parts of your life still resemble the version of you she walked away from? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? You don't have to make noise. You just have to make moves. Rebuild until you're unrecognizable. Not for revenge, not for her return, but because the next version of you deserves a life the old you couldn't even imagine. Say it out loud. I evolve for me. That's the mindset. That's the message. And that's how you attract, not through need, but through evolution. Let me ask you something honest. When did we start confusing leadership with pursuit? At what point did men start believing that in order to win her heart, they had to chase it, running, proving, waiting for a green light that never comes, only to end up exhausted, confused, and wondering what went wrong? Here's the truth. Chasing comes from lack. Leading comes from vision, from wholeness, from knowing exactly who you are and where you're going with or without her. A man who leads doesn't beg for validation. He doesn't mold himself to win approval. He builds, he moves, he lives with intention. And if she's meant to walk beside him, she will. Not because he dragged her into alignment, but because the path he's walking is so clear, so powerful, she chooses to follow. That's the difference. Leadership doesn't ask permission. It offers direction. Most guys don't realize this. They chase because they think that's what trying looks like. That if they're persistent enough, consistent enough, nice enough, she see their worth. But all she sees is a man who's orbiting her instead of orbiting his own life. And women, they don't want to be chased. They want to be invited into something greater. Let's get real here. What's more magnetic, a man refreshing his phone, reading texts, trying to crack the code? Or a man so locked into his mission that her attention becomes a bonus, not a lifeline? You want to inspire her? Stop waiting. Start moving. Not to impress, not to provoke a reaction, But because the version of you who chases is not the version of you who leads, let's flip the script. Instead of thinking, how do I get her to like me? Ask, is the life I'm building worth her joining? That shift right there is everything. When you lead without chasing, you stop acting from fear. You stop checking your energy every 5 minutes to match her mood. You stop living for breadcrumbs of attention and start living for something bigger than the relationship. And ironically, that's when the dynamic flips. Because now you're not just another man hoping to be seen. You've become the path. Not because you forced her to follow, but because your presence pulled her forward. Let's be clear, leading doesn't mean controlling. It doesn't mean telling her what to do, where to go, or who to be. It means showing her what self-respect looks like, what stability feels like, what consistency does over time. It means standing in your lane so firmly that anyone walking beside you knows they're walking with a man, not a boy chasing comfort. And yes, sometimes she won't follow. Sometimes you'll outgrow her. Sometimes your clarity will intimidate her. That's okay. Because your leadership was never meant to be accepted by everyone, only by those strong enough to rise with it. So ask yourself, are you living a life she could respect? Or are you waiting for her approval before you start? Are you hoping to be chosen, or becoming the kind of man who never needed to be? Say it out loud, I lead. I don't chase. Because when that becomes your truth, you don't just inspire her. You transform yourself. You become a force that attracts, not a follower that pleads. You don't ask for alignment. You create it, and she either steps into your path or watches you walk away with purpose. Let's finish with this. True masculine power isn't loud, isn't flashy, isn't reactive. It's calm, it's still, it's centered. It's the quiet confidence that fills a room, not because it wants to be noticed, but because it doesn't need to be. You've probably heard the phrase, be the storm, but most people get it wrong. They think it means aggression, domination, that big, unpredictable energy. But the storm I'm talking about isn't chaotic. It's the one she can trust. It doesn't rage, it doesn't lose control. It shifts the air simply by entering the space. That's the man she's looking for. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't collapse when she gets emotional, distant, or unsure. The one who isn't here to prove strength, but embodies it. You want to know why women test men? Why they throw emotional curveballs, or push subtle boundaries, or go cold just to see what happens. It's not manipulation. It's not cruelty. It's instinct. She's looking for the perimeter, the edge of your masculinity. She wants to know, is this man safe to follow when things get uncertain? Or will he spiral the moment she gets scared? Because here's the thing, she's not just looking for love. She's looking for containment. Not control, but emotional gravity. She wants to feel like she can be the ocean. Because you've already become the shore. But if every time she raises her voice, you raise yours louder. If every time she pulls back, you chase. If every time she tests, you panic or plead or try to prove yourself, she learns one thing. You are not her anchor. And if she can't trust you to hold your center, she stops leaning into you altogether. But when you stay calm, when you meet her chaos with presence, when you speak less but stand taller, she starts to feel something ancient, something primal. Safety. Not the kind that shelters her from life, but the kind that says, you can fall apart here, and I won't. Now, this doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. Being the storm doesn't mean being passive. It means you correct with certainty. You walk away when needed. You enforce boundaries with composure, not with ego. Because that's what real power looks like. Measured, focused, controlled. You don't explain your value. You show it in how little you need to defend it. You don't seek her validation. You already validated yourself before she ever arrived. You don't try to hold her tighter. You become so grounded in your purpose that she doesn't want to let go. Let me give you a visual. Two men in a storm. One is panicking, screaming, running from tree to tree, trying to stay dry. The other? He's still, standing tall, hood up, eyes forward, grounded. Same storm. Different response. Which man do you trust? Which one do you feel safe around? Exactly. And that's what she's picking up on, not your words, not your muscles, not your money, but your energy. Your emotional posture. So if you're still trying to prove how strong you are, if you're still over-explaining, overreacting, overcompensating, take a step back and remember, true strength doesn't announce itself. It holds the room. Be the storm that steadies her, not the one that needs her approval to stand. Be the force that doesn't beg to be trusted, because trust just happens around you. And if she leaves, you don't flinch. You don't chase. You don't break, because the real storm never asks to be noticed. It just changes the atmosphere the moment it enters. Be that. Be the storm she trusts, the calm in the chaos, the presence she remembers, long after the noise fades. So let's bring it full circle. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you is shifting. Maybe you're tired. Tired of the games, tired of the confusion, tired of bending, shrinking, chasing approval just to feel like enough. And here's the truth no one ever told you clearly. You don't gain power over women. You become powerful, and women feel it. That shift? It doesn't start with tactics. It starts with self-control. Because real power isn't about what you can dominate. It's about what you can master within yourself. The world tells you that to be desirable, you have to do more, say more, prove more. But the truth is simpler than that. When you stop chasing her approval and start living with purpose, she responds, not because you manipulated her, not because you performed the perfect strategy, but because purpose is magnetic and grounded. Masculinity is rare. And rare is valuable. Let me tell you something personal. There was a time I thought if I could just say the right thing, be the right kind of guy, show up perfectly, I'd finally be enough. But every time I tried to win her over, I lost myself. And one day, I realized I didn't need to become someone for her. I needed to return to me. And that's the final lesson. You don't need to become someone else to be loved. You need to become the man you were always meant to be. Because when you elevate, when you raise your standards, your discipline, your presence, she either joins you or she watches you rise from a distance. You're not here to chase. You're not here to control. You're not here to convince anyone to stay. You're here to build a life so aligned, so clear, so rooted in truth, that anyone who doesn't fit simply fades away and you don't collapse when they do. That's power. The power to walk away. The power to stay calm. The power to respond, not react. The power to lead yourself before ever asking to lead anyone else. And that power? It's not given. It's earned. Decision by decision. Standard by standard. Moment by moment. So maybe the most important question isn't, how do I get her back? Or how do I make her stay? But rather, am I becoming the kind of man who doesn't need her to feel whole? Because when you become that man, something incredible happens. You stop being shaken by who leaves. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop asking for permission to be seen, to lead, to love. You just are. Centered, focused, powerful, not because you say you are, but because everything about you proves it. So if this message landed with you, if something inside you is waking up, piece by piece, remember this. The man who seeks power over others is insecure. The man who becomes powerful within himself is unstoppable. And that's who you're becoming. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the most grounded man in the room. The one who doesn't beg for love, because he lives in alignment with it. Say it with me. I am the power. Not because of what she thinks, not because of what they say, but because you chose to rebuild from the inside out. This isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of something permanent. So go live it. Not for applause, not for attention, but because your highest self is waiting. And from this point forward, every decision you make shapes him.